We're going to get started. It's 12:01. We'd like to welcome you all to our webinar promoting student interaction and engagement in a remote learning environment. My name is Jasmine Parent. I'm a learning technology consultant at Teaching and Learning Services. I'm here today with a colleague who will be co-hosting the webinar with me, Erin McDonough, who is a teaching and learning planner at TLS. So just some housekeeping notes. We want to let you know that this session is being recorded and the recording will be posted on our website. I'd like to note that you're muted upon entry, so we ask you to hold off with questions while we present. We will be setting aside some time at the end of the webinar to address some of your questions. And one more point, I'd like to say that all of the slides from this webinar are posted on our website with the recording. So let's get started. We're going to start today by going over the goals we have for this webinar. So our goal for today's webinar is to define what engagement and interaction mean in the context of a remote teaching and learning environment. We will also be identifying technologies and strategies you can use to include fixed and flexible activities to promote engagement in your course. So first, let's define what we mean when we say engagement and interaction. The concept of engagement and interaction in education is a multidimensional one. Before giving you strategies on how to increase engagement, we think it's important to realize that there are different modes of engagement and interaction when it comes to education. Interaction can occur through students engaging with your course content. It can occur between students, and it can occur between an instructor and a student. So something to keep in mind in a remote learning environment is that instructors and students' peers can sometimes seem like these mystical figures that exist only behind a screen. In this type of environment, since students don't have that physical connection to the university, their connection to you and other students often become the main connection to the institution. So because of this, it's really important to foster some sort of rapport with your students and give them opportunities to connect with each other. Creating a sense of community is essential to learning, especially in a remote environment. And it's important to be very intentional with how you design strategies to increase engagement and that these strategies align with your learning outcomes. So this will help your students achieve a more deep and meaningful learning experience. In the following slides, we're going to present you with some ideas and strategies on how you can promote engagement and ultimately create that deeper type of learning experience in the remote environment. So I'm going to pass the next section off to my colleague, Erin. Erin, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. So again, as Jasmine said, my name is Erin McDonough, and I'm a teaching and learning planner at Teaching and Learning Services. And so for those of you who attended one of our earlier webinars on planning for remote delivery, these two terms, sorry, I'm just seeing a comment page not found. Sorry, I guess Adam will deal with that. For those of you who attended the earlier webinar on planning for remote delivery, these two terms may seem familiar. So we use them to describe remote teaching activities and interactions that take place in two different ways, so fixed or flexible. Go on to the next slide. So briefly put, fixed interactions are fixed in time. Students and instructors engage in an activity together in a shared virtual space at a single time. So by and large, most of these activities will take place using Zoom, and I will get into that in more detail in a moment. And on the other hand, we have flexible interactions, which are designed to be accessible to students who want to access them at different times. So there's no live component. So again, this is about time. So choosing the interactions that fit each type of delivery is really up to you as an instructor, based on your course context and the learning outcomes you've set in your course. A live class, for instance, can be recorded in Zoom, and then you can upload it to My Courses. So you're making what was once a fixed interaction available to students in a flexible way. So all this is to say that there's both mutability and complementarity to the concepts of flexible and fixed. And in this webinar, we really want to give you examples of the activities that fit into each of these categories. And we also want to encourage you to think of your course as featuring both fixed and flexible interactions. We'll go on to the next slide. So for fixed activities, I'll give you a few examples here. So the next slide actually shows a great example of a sample Zoom class that we have pulled from the University of Minnesota. They have a lot of great examples on their website. So the same thinking around active learning in a physical classroom can apply to remote teaching in a virtual classroom. So in physical classrooms, and that's actually where most of my experience lies. My teaching and learning planning is to do with physical spaces. So I think I approach it from that perspective, looking at how you can take what you're already doing in a physical classroom and translating it to a live Zoom class. So in a physical classroom, we leverage the affordances that we have in the room to better engage students, like we use a whiteboard, or we ask students to turn around and discuss a subject with their peers sitting behind them. And a Zoom session, most of these affordances can be replicated pretty seamlessly using the functions that are available to you as the host of the meeting. So as I said, this is an example of how you can chunk a 50-minute session into different segments. And there's a lot of alternating between what are engaging activities to bring in students to the conversation and the delivery of content. So it starts right off with a whiteboarding activity where you may pose a question like, how's everybody feeling today? Put up a symbol, write a word to describe how you feel today. And then maybe a little poll, you could ask them something like, today we're going to be talking about this. How would you rate your existing knowledge on this topic? And then give them a multiple choice poll where they can answer, this is what I think, this is what I know, maybe 25% of the content is familiar to me. And then you would maybe go into a mini lecture. So take 10 minutes and do some content delivery. And Zoom has an annotation feature that you can activate so that while you're sharing your content, you can annotate the slides using an iPad, using your screen, with your mouse. There are many different ways of doing this. And then you go back to another poll, maybe ask the students, did anything surprise you? Is there anything here that you had never heard of before? And then into a breakout room, which is a good basis for group work in a virtual classroom. Give them a discussion question to ask, to respond to. And then coming back to the main session from the breakout rooms, you could have a debrief session where you ask one person from each of the breakout rooms to report back to the larger group on what they've learned, and so on and so forth. So there are many ways of interspersing delivery of content with engaging activities for the students. There's a great benefit to this, which is that you can help your students to avoid Zoom fatigue. I know that I'm finding it difficult sometimes to be in Zoom sessions all day. I'm sure many of you are finding the same thing. It can become pretty tiring. And also you're encouraging your students, as you would in a physical class, to reflect on the content, engage with one another, and to have experiences other than just sitting passively and listening to a lecture. We'll go on to the next slide. So I'd like to present a few examples of fixed synchronous activities that can be easily and simply adapted to your course content, namely reflecting back on Jasmine's different types of interactions. Student-instructor interaction, that would be mostly through live classes that are presented using Zoom. There are lots of different tools, as I mentioned already, that are available to you as a session host. I'll describe a few of them to you rather. And then there's also student-student interaction. I touched briefly on breakout rooms. I'll get into a little more detail about that in a second. And then there's polling. And we have three types that I'll describe to you. It's a good way to check in with students in a low-stress way to check their knowledge or to see if they have any questions. So I do also want to just make sure that I mentioned that this webinar is a lot about the what, the things that you can do. The how on how you do these things is probably going to be explained in greater depth in future webinars that we're offering. For instance, leveling up your Zoom skills. There's going to be a great webinar in the next couple of days. You can also watch recordings on our website of previous offerings of that webinar to explain how you do some of these things in Zoom. And then polling, we have another webinar dedicated entirely to polling to help you to use polls in your classroom. So going on to the next slide. Yes, I'd like to talk a little bit about a few tools that facilitate instructor-student interactions. So what you see in front of you here is the Zoom toolbar, which has probably become a really familiar sight to a lot of you over the last couple of months, or it will become a very familiar sight to you. It's a pretty straightforward, minimalist toolbar, but there are a lot of interesting things that you can do with the features that it gives you access to. So in the first square that's highlighted on the left-hand side is the chat button. So it may or may not be practical given the type of course that you're offering. If you have a larger class, you may want to think seriously about having a moderator for the chat, similar to what Adam is doing right now in our chat. but it is a good tool to use if you want to ask a question, have students respond in text to your question. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing proposition. So as Adam just mentioned in the chat, you can turn it off if it's distracting you, if you see the questions coming in and they're kind of like making you pause as you deliver your content. You can also deploy it at strategic intervals. So you can turn it off for a while, turn it on, ask a question, have the responses come in, turn it off again. The transcript of the chat is actually available to you after your session. It's downloaded to your computer once you end the session as a host. So the screen share button, the middle button that I've highlighted here, maybe many of you have probably already used this to share a PowerPoint presentation. That's probably one of the most obvious uses of this function. It's actually what we're doing right now to share this presentation. But there are a lot of other things that screen share allows you to do. And including you can share different applications off your computer. So it's not just presentations, you can share a web browser screen, you can share SPSS if you're doing some stats work, you can mark up things using the annotate function, you can share a whiteboard as we briefly showed with the breakdown of the class at the beginning of the section I started presenting to you. So there's a lot of different instructional tools that can be used and it's a very powerful function. And then lastly, I've highlighted on the far right reactions. And this is just a quick way of checking in with your students. It's, you can maybe ask a question like, how's everybody doing today? And ask them to respond with using the reactions button. And it's a good, quick, real-time reaction that everybody can see. So actually, I wanted to try this right away. I'll just ask everybody if you can go down to your reactions button and choose either the thumbs up or the clapping reaction just to show me that you know where it is. Yeah, so I'm seeing the reactions coming up. So you can see two on the screen, thumbs up, little icons of thumbs up and clapping hands are appearing in the windows. And that's, oh, the thumbs down is, I don't know if actually that's a feature, but there's another feature you can use to show a thumbs up, like the equivalent of a thumbs down. So yeah, it's a way of checking sort of the metaphorical temperature in the room, seeing if people are with you. And it's visible to everybody. There's another way of doing this so that it's not visible to your students. And I'm going to show you that in a second. So go on to the next slide. So Zoom is actually one of the best tools for breakout rooms. And breakout rooms, it's one of the only tools for video conferencing, web conferencing that allows you to easily send people into these small discussion pods and then bring them back to the plenary session. So it's good for group work. You can set time limits and limits on the number of people per group. There are some limits to it. You can only have up to 200 people in a room and you can only have 50 breakout rooms at once, but I would imagine for most of you this is probably going to be sufficient. I think it's hard to actually think of a use case where 200 people in a breakout room would be very would be productive, but I guess, you know, there's always, I'd love to be challenged on that. You can have the rooms auto-created. So if you click on breakout rooms, you can choose whether you want to manually sort people into rooms. So if you want to do some engineering on the population of the rooms, you can do that. Or you can just have Zoom decide how people are sorted into them. And you can actually also have the rooms pre-sorted using my courses. This is something that my colleagues can show you how to do in our leveling up your Zoom skills session, but that might be useful to you as well. And then sort of like in the same way that you might want to visit group work pods, or not pods, but group work discussions if you were in a physical space, you can actually also do this using Zoom. You can, as the instructor, as the host of the meeting, you can pop into the rooms and see how people are doing with the discussion question. And it's, you can also have students wave you in. They can raise their hand and let you know, I need your help over here. So it's definitely another tool to help you reduce the tediousness of long Zoom meetings. It gives students a chance to talk to each other. It can help to foster a sense of community. It's a really great way of having students realize that there are other students out there to talk to. We'll go on to the next slide, please. So student to content interaction. So as promised, here are the polling options that you have available to you. So I've sorted these here into 3 categories, and they kind of go from the easiest and quickest and the least sophisticated option to the most sophisticated option. The quickest option for you is the Zoom yes or no button. So it's pretty easy to manage. You ask a question and you ask students to indicate whether they agree yes or disagree no with the proposal in front of them. It's visible to you as an instructor. Zoom will tally the results for you, so you can kind of see this, live ticker of how many people are responding yes or no to the question that you've asked. But the downside is that Zoom doesn't save that information for you, and you only can ask yes or no questions. So if you do have something you want to do on the fly, it's pretty much the easiest. It is the easiest one to do on the fly. You can ask a question and have students respond to you that way. In an intermediate sense of intermediate sophistication and difficulty to set up, there's Zoom polling. We're going to do an example of this in just a moment. It's pretty easy to use, but you will need to set up your poll in advance. And you can have multiple choice questions that you ask your students. So that is also, I would say, a downside. You won't be able to go beyond multiple choice questions. And what we have noticed in reviewing our Zoom recordings is that even though in the live Zoom call you can see the poll on the screen and you can see the results as they're broadcast, it doesn't get captured in the Zoom recording for whatever reason. So you may want to take that into account if you plan to do Zoom polls. And the most sophisticated solution is polling at McGill. Many of you have probably already used this in your classes in physical classrooms. It is a really rich tool that provides detailed analytics on the polls that you've administered. You can use different types of questions, and the limits the scope of the tool is much broader, but it does require more preparation. It's a much more complicated tool to use, so you would want to take that into consideration if you wanted to use it. So we're going to do a brief activity now and have a Zoom poll to show you what this would look like if you were to do it in your live class. So I'm going to show you this poll question in just a second and give you 30 seconds to answer it. And you will be able to click on the answer that best suits your intentions. So here, I'm going to launch the poll now. All right, so you have 30 seconds. I'd just like you to respond. Which polling method are you most likely to use in your course? So as the administrator of the poll, I can see your responses are flooding in right now. I'm not going to show my hand and reveal what you're answering, but it looks, it's pretty interesting. I'll give you another 5 seconds to answer. And yes, everyone's still answering. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now. And now I have the option to share the results with you. So you should be able to see the results now. So it seems like Zoom polling is the winner in this case. And actually that seems to be the one people have preferred in other iterations of this webinar that we've given. So it seems to be a popular tool. It is nice. It's sort of a nice middle ground between being easy to use and sophisticated enough to be able to capture the kind of results you want. All right. So going on to the next slide, I'm going to hand things back to my colleague Jasmine, and she'll be talking to you about flexible activities.
Thank you, Erin. So let's talk a little bit about flexible interactive learning activities. There are different ways in which you can get your students to interact and engage more deeply with your content. One way to do so is to add quick and low stakes learning activities to the flow of your content. So we suggest adding active learning activities between content topics. So rather than presenting a long piece of content and then giving students knowledge checks at the end of a module only, you might want to consider staggering or alternating your content with an activity. So just to clarify, when I say content, I mean your course materials. So things like PowerPoints, slides, readings, articles, website, or videos. The activities are interactive pieces that allow your students to practice understanding your content. So they are active learning pieces. Activities can be self-assessment questions, quiz questions, survey questions, or perhaps a discussion prompt. So short activities like these give students an opportunity to check in with their learning, but it also shifts their focus from just listening and being more passive to being a little more active with their learning. So you can use these types of activities as knowledge checks after you present content or an idea, or as a way to get them thinking about the next content topic. You can use Microsoft Teams to foster student-to-student interaction. So Microsoft Teams is available to McGill students through the Office 365 suite. Students often use multiple platforms to organize group work, for example. So they might be using OneDrive or Google Drive to share their files, maybe Skype or some sort of other video chat platform for virtual meetings, and then something else, another platform to just chat and brainstorm. So rather than having them use 5 different tools or go to 5 different places to do a project remotely, they can use Teams to achieve the same tasks. It allows students to create a team. They can add their peers, have conversations, upload work, and be working on documents at the same time. They can also have virtual live meetings through Teams. And best of all, it's provided and supported by McGill, so it's free for them to use. So this is a big one, discussion boards, and I'm mostly going to be referring to my course's discussion boards. So discussion boards are an excellent tool to use to promote engagement and interaction. The discussion board can be used to achieve all modes of interaction in a remote learning environment. So you can have students interact with your content by using a discussion board for a place of reflection or self-assessment. You can use question prompts that give them the opportunity to deeply reflect on what they know, what they understand, maybe what they don't understand. You can also use the discussion board to have students answer topic or reading-based questions. So for example, maybe having them write a short summary of a reading you want them to do or answer a question about that reading. This is an example here I have of a discussion board for a unit in the World of Chemistry course. As you can see within Unit 2, there are multiple discussion questions about topics within that unit. So this is just a way, it's also a way for you to pinpoint troubled areas where maybe you need to make clarifications on material depending on what misconceptions might come up. You can interact with your students on the discussion board as well. So here you can see an example of a forum used to ask students for students to ask a question to you, the instructor, or a TA to have them clarify misunderstandings. Or they could just pose a general question about the content. So this might be a big time saver for yourself or your TAs in asking frequently asked questions that are coming in through your email. So if you're getting the same type of question over and over and would like to address them all at once rather than reply to everyone individually, you can always post the question and your response on a Q&A discussion board. You can also use the discussion board to get to know your students. So you might want to post like an introductory video, for example, or just a post talking about yourself and then having your students introduce themselves on the discussion board. So this facilitates instructor-student interaction, but also student-to-student interaction is a really nice and easy way to build a sense of community. And finally, you might not know this, but I've seen instructors use the discussion board as a place for students to post reflective journals. So you can set it up in a way that only you and a student can view their individual journal entries. So throughout the semester, students will answer questions and perhaps reflect on material in which you can provide very personalized feedback to each student individually. The discussion board is also a great place for students to connect with each other. So you can have a forum dedicated to a student cafe where students can ask each other questions or have conversations. It's an opportunity for students to share their own forms of content. So if they have an interesting article they want to share with their peers or a website, they can also use it to give each other reminders of due dates that are coming up. It's just a really nice way, really easy way to get them to connect with their peers. You can also set up discussion forums especially for group work. So students within a group will only be able to see their group's discussion forum, for example. In general, discussion boards are great because they can result in more thought through responses. It gives students more time to discuss and perhaps think about content than in a live class. And one of my favorite things about a discussion board, probably because I can relate when I was a student, is that it may be a place for the more reserved and quiet students to feel more comfortable asking questions or posting their thoughts versus a face-to-face lecture setting. We have some recommended practices that we would like to share for discussion boards. So concerning feedback, you might consider very basic feedback practices or more sophisticated. So you can set up your discussion posts to allow for upvotes or star ratings, which you can give to your students or they can perhaps give to each other. A more sophisticated way to give feedback to your students is to use a rubric with defined criteria on what you expect, and then assessing how well they've met the criteria in your rubric. So here's a very basic example of a rubric that might be used for a discussion board. You can create your own criteria and decide what constitutes as good or poor posts. You can also link a discussion board to your grade book in My Courses. So if you would like to, you're able to use a discussion topic for assessment purposes. Some strategies to increase interaction on discussion boards can really vary depending on your course, depending on your context, depending on your learning outcomes. You can create smaller group discussions, as you can see here in the example, especially if you have a larger class. So it might be a little easier and more intimate for students to discuss a topic in smaller groups versus a large class of, let's say, 500 students. You can also design an activity where interaction is necessary. So for example, you can tell your students that they're expected to post one post of their own and at least reply to at least one post of their peers' posts. You can include the setting that students can't see their peers' posts until they make their post first. This might be useful if you're asking a question and don't want students to be influenced by their classmates before posting their own answers or thoughts. And finally, it's also important to consider the question type as the prompt. So it's a better practice to ask more open-ended questions or perhaps give multiple questions that students can choose from. This just avoids having students write responses that are just one word or a yes or a no, and that don't really facilitate any form of further discussion. One last thing to think about is how you're going to manage the communications in your discussion board. So it's a good idea to set expectations for your students. Give students very specific directions as to minimum number of words required or minimum number of references or examples they have to give. Perhaps what your standards will be regarding formality of language. Is participation a requirement? How often do you expect them to post? Are you going to value quality over quantity, etc.? Here's an example of some basic guidelines that are given to students regarding a discussion board in a particular course. So as you can see, the second guideline is actually to be polite. So this is an example of establishing rules for netiquette. Netiquette in a nutshell is online communication etiquette. It's important to clarify from the beginning of your course that abusive or offensive communication will not be tolerated. You can also clarify that you expect to see students write academically. So avoiding using emojis or slang, and ensure proper citations and references. And finally, you might want to consider how your discussion board is going to be moderated. So are you going to be moderating the posts? Are you going to be reading everything that comes in? Are you going to be responding to everything? Will your TA be moderating? There are some cases where I've seen instructors actually assign student moderators within the class. So as you can see in general, there are many things to consider and many ways in which you can use a discussion board to promote engagement and interaction. It might seem overwhelming, but discussion boards can really provide active and social learning opportunities, especially in a remote setting. So in remote learning, sometimes students can feel isolated when they can't see their peers, they can't see you. So using the discussion board as an opportunity to set up a space for people to connect and feel a little less alone is very important. It's also a really unique opportunity for students to process more deeply, maybe ask questions, debate, and then share their diverse perspectives.
All right, so we're coming up on our time now. That went pretty quickly, and I know we presented you with a lot of different ideas. I hope you found some inspiration in them. You probably have a lot more questions though, and so I'd really like to encourage you as a bit of homework to check out My Courses Essentials, which is a self-paced tutorial available to you on My Courses. Instructors are enrolled in the course, and if you go in and you don't see it there, there's a batch upload that happens every night. Perhaps it'll be there for you tomorrow. And so this course, it includes best practices and links to step-by-step instructions and tutorials for setting up a lot of the tools that we've shown you today. And you can navigate through it as a full course, or you can refer to it when you need it or when you're setting up your own course. So that's one tool you can have a look at. And also, if we go to the next slide, we have quite a few future upcoming webinars that you might want to attend. So today you were at the Promoting Student Interaction and Engagement for Remote Learning webinar, and in this diagram you can see we actually have two kind of further webinars on topics we've discussed today. One is getting started with polling at McGill, and the other is engaging with students online with Zoom, so covering both those fixed and flexible activities that we talked about. But there are a host of other opportunities for you to attend webinars, and I think we've offered most of these now at least once, so you can view recordings of the webinars on our website as well if you're not able to attend one of the live sessions. And then finally, what I'd like to do at this point is open up the floor to you. We know you probably have tons of questions, and we'd like to give you a chance to ask them. So at this point, we'll start monitoring the chat and answering any questions you may have. So Monica has asked, do we still have access to My Courses if we don't teach formal classes at McGill? Jasmine, do you know the answer to that one? Oh, Jasmine, you're muted actually.
Thank you, sorry. You will have access to courses that you have taught, but you won't have access to anything else if I'm correct. You'll still have access to a course if you've taught one previously and it's been expired, but other than that, if you're no longer teaching formal classes, you won't. You can always request, it depends on what you're doing, but you can always request a project type course if you want to use My Courses for something. It just has to be somehow affiliated with McGill.
So moving on to another question here, one that I actually find quite interesting. Brian has asked, the university requires us to permit students to turn off their video during live teaching. I believe this is a discussion and interaction killer. What is your view of this requirement? And I personally prefer when cameras are on, but I'm also sympathetic to those who prefer not to have their cameras on. So I agree that it definitely does make it feel more like a regular class in a physical space if everyone has their cameras on. But I understand that some students may have reasons for keeping them off. Perhaps they prefer to keep their private space private, and I definitely have empathy for that. Or they may have, they may be taking care of relatives or children at the same time as attending your class, and they prefer to have their camera off so that it's not a distraction to other students. So while I would prefer to be in a call myself where everyone is visible, I definitely have empathy for those who prefer to have the cameras off. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jasmine. I put you on the spot, sorry.
No, you haven't. I fully agree with you. I think this is just an odd, exceptional situation that we're all in right now. I agree that having your cameras on does foster more engagement and interaction, but if there is a student or two that prefers in that time not to have it off and they have good reason, I think that's perfectly okay. It's quite it's quite a view into people's personal lives, you know, seeing in their house and their rooms. So we have to be a little bit sensitive to that if they choose to not have it on one day.
I agree that in if all things were equal, it's better if everyone has their camera on. I just don't think that we're in a position to mandate that it be on.
Right, yeah, and Adam made a good point. So students are still, should still be present, and they can always respond by audio. So whether you see them or not, if they can contribute to the discussion through audio, then they're still able to participate.
Mm-hmm. And we actually had an interesting question in another webinar about anonymizing oneself in a call, and a student can rename themselves, for instance. Like you see right now, my name is showing as Erin McDonough. This is something that I can change if I wish. I could put up my name as, you know, Turkey Globetrotter if I want. It's something that's easily done in the Zoom settings. So that may be one way that students wish they can anonymize themselves. You can also, like Adam says, you can turn off your camera, you can ask questions just with audio. There are ways of keeping some privacy.
Mm-hmm. And Annette suggested perhaps being flexible, so allowing people to turn it off, but have certain moments, like when there's a special discussion, where you can encourage them to put their video on. So that is a really great suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Does one need multiple screens to do polling, Zoom, and other activities at the same time? This is going to come down to your personal preferences, what you want to see on your screen while you do your live session. Right now, I can tell you a little bit about my setup. So by default, when somebody starts sharing their screen, it shows up in full screen. So but you can actually change that in view options. And so you can have maybe half of your screen with the Zoom call, half of your screen with your notes, and then you can put up a poll, and that opens up as a separate window too. But it depends on what you want to see. So I'm a self-identified extrovert. I really like to see everybody in the call. So for me, it's very important to be able to see all of these little squares with these little faces in it. I kind of get a buzz from it. If you find that, on the other hand, that is distracting and not helpful, and perhaps even a reminder of the strange times that we're in, maybe you want to hide that and you just want to have your notes up. It's entirely up to you, but you don't really have to have two screens. Just to get back to the original question, there are ways of kind of, you can toggle between windows, or you can break up your screen so that you have two different types of content showing on one screen. One thing you want to remember, though, is that if you do have your notes, for instance, on a second screen that is away from your camera, you probably want to check in by looking at your camera every once in a while. I think it's pretty important to have this kind of virtual eye contact with your students. It's just a bit more engaging for them.
Mm-hmm. There was a question earlier, I don't know if it was ever answered, but does polling at McGill require using PowerPoint? So for this question, I encourage you to attend our polling workshop, or a polling webinar, sorry, not workshop. That's going to be given a few times in July, but just to quickly respond to that, no, you don't have to use PowerPoint. There is a way to set up polling at McGill that is called Anywhere Polling, where you can use with any application, other application that you use. It doesn't have to be integrated with PowerPoint, and it does relatively the same thing.
Yeah. I see Adam brought up in the chat too that we have to take into consideration also that there may be students who are joining from different time zones. So I think this kind of speaks to the point that it's important to have both fixed and flexible, not all of one or all of the other. That way there are different ways for students to access content, and you are not relying entirely on students being able to join at a certain time to be able to access the materials for the course, especially those who happen to find themselves, for instance, in China or Saudi Arabia, and they're not able. It's a little bit unkind to expect them to be up for 2 a.m. classes. So I think that getting a sense of your student population may help with that too, like the cohort of students that you're dealing with, knowing where they're coming from perhaps, so you can plan your activities in a way that allows for maximum engagement.
I just wanted to comment again on the McGill faculty who are clinical teachers. So if you are a clinical teacher at McGill, you can request to have a course set up for you in my courses. So I've done this with actually a few clinical teachers. So you could just send an email to tls@mcgill.ca, and we'll get that set up for you. So you will have access to all the tools there.
I'm just running through the chat here.
Previously, when I answered that, I was thinking if you were no longer associated with McGill, but if you're a clinical instructor that semester, then yeah, you can get access. We can get you access.
Yeah. I just read David Hensley's comment about not all instructors would choose to accept having their lectures recorded. Definitely empathetic to that, and I think that Adam's provided a good response here, that you may want to just poll your students and find out how easy it is for them to access live lectures, and that may help you to make the decision about whether or not you record. Maybe I'll just use this opportunity to make a little plug for the mobile app that we have for my courses. It's called Pulse. You can download it from either the Google Play Store or from the App Store if you're using an iPhone. Students can download it too. It gives you pretty sophisticated access to my courses, and you get notifications when new content is posted. It's a really useful app. So yes, Pulse.
Yeah, and that might be something you would like to encourage your students to download, because if they have it on their device, they will get the notifications if you've added content, for example, or if they've posted to the discussion board and somebody's replied to them. So it's a little more sophisticated. They get it directly through the app rather than them having to log in through a web browser and see their notifications there.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed quite a few people saying, oh, the chat for this webinar is great. There's so many useful links. How do I get access to them? So we've got a couple of options. All of our resources will be on the TLS website. So you can go and look at those up again. Or if you'd like, in the chat window, you can actually download the chat by clicking on the file button. So if you would just like to have a transcript of today's chat, you can also do that. Regarding students in China. Oh yeah, so there are special protocol, there's a special Zoom client for students coming from China. I don't know if we have the link to that, but I know that there is only one that's usable in China for students to be able to join Zoom calls from there.
Anybody, just to jump in really quickly.
Thanks, Adam.
I just wanted to jump in with anything with China. Students should have access to all the materials from China straight up. If they have any problem, they can use VPN. It's impossible to predict what will happen in China, but if you do have students from China that are teaching in your course, it's a great thing to find out. Please keep in touch with them. They will be the first to know if anything is happening, not us and not you. So it's important to keep in mind that if you do have students that are accessing the courses from China and what options they have, for the most part, what we have seen is everything should be okay, but it's something to keep in mind. They still should be able to use Zoom normally, but you can also use, they can access McGill VPN in order to get access.
Thank you, Adam. I was a little out of my depth on that one. Okay. So if there aren't any other questions, I think we might close the webinar for today. It's 12:43. This recording will be made available to you through the TLS website. So if you want to review it, we welcome you to. There are many other resources, as I previously mentioned. We encourage you to go and to poke around, have a look at what we have to offer. And we hope to see you at future webinars. It's been a pleasure seeing you all today. We know how hard this is. We're all just doing our best. I'm sure whatever you produce is going to be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for being so engaged in our engagement webinar. There's been some really great posts in the chat, so thanks again.
Thank you.